Jatin Naik, who could not come to this. When you talk of colonial, I talked about colonial mindset and decolonializing it, and this is not so simple as it is made out to be in European universities today, as also in the poetry that Tiango talks about what he talks about India. A book which is very acclaimed today, Provincializing Europe, where Dipesh Chakraborty locates modernity and modern knowledge traditions as well as modern liberal tradition as well as capitalism. In those three broad domains, we can locate modernity, that is the ubiquitous system of capitalism, the knowledge tradition which is called as Newtonian traditions, and the liberal political values such as reason, humanism, democracy, representations, and the birth of individual, as Burkhardt says in Isa Marx, the beginning of or the birth of individual and man. But this is not so simple. Much we try, these categories enter into our third domain now. Maybe because of the fact that we have made these binaries between Occident and Orient, itself the binary being the product of Orientalism, as Edward said, or because of the binaries that they deliberately created between the colonized and the colonizers. These categories that we use today to distinguish and mark these binaries, such as Occident with its specific attributes, Orient with its specific attributes, at some time overlaps. And therefore, when we talk of decolonization of mind, colonializing or colonizers' mindset, to talk about the broad Western civilizations, actually we are ignoring these points of overlap, and I will conclude with these points of overlap because we have already independence, we have got our independence 75 years ago, but much more than when we encounter the intimate enemy, as Ashish Nandi said, we are also equally a civilizations of 4,000 years of continuity. We have a vibrant literary, cultural civilization, therefore could not be dismissed as Tyler, as many other anthropologists did with regard to Africa. They could not do so regarding India. Therefore, our intimate enemy is much more nuanced, as also from the perspective of colonizers, with the Indians as colonized is much more nuanced. Therefore, and this nuances also continues to be present now, because we have the literary traditions, we have also the animism as well as the spiritualism of each other going together. Therefore, when we are talking about colonized India as a colony, or Indians as a colonized people, so also with regard to colonizers, they are much more heterogeneous, and it is to this heterogeneity and heterogeneous response that I'll also talk about, because in nationalism and derivative discourse and its derivative discourse, also Parth Chatterjee talks about how we encountered this intimate enemy, and he talks about three moments of Indian national movement: point of departure with regard to Bankim Chandra, point of maneuver with regard to Gandhi and especially Hind Swaraj, and point of arrival with civic nationalism and constitution as the blueprint and the kind of modernizations that are ushered in by Nehru on the after 1947. Therefore, we see much different. Try to locate, the structure of representation is divided in three sections. When we talk of colonial mindset and decolonizing it, what are the sources of these differences I talked of? And then I talk of the responses that, and I told you that this is much more nuanced responses of the Indians to this issue of challenges posed by colonizers and how we can at least give an alternative envisioning of India that is based on our civilizational ethos, but it is not a Puritan one where we just reject whatever came from the West, but there are points of overlaps, as I told you, which existed all through civilizations, all through human interactions. When we talk of colonial mindset, as you could see, Sir talked about avoidance approach and avoidance, which Ashish Nandi talks. It's not about avoidance, it's about encounter when we could not just, we had to respond to colonialism. When we talk about, just to problematize the issue, we have the category and the problem of category, we have the problem of West, the colony, the metropolitan center, the colonies, and the mind. When we talk of mind as mere third, this is about the problem that we face. This is about the categories that we use. For example, mind in Indian traditions is much more subtle and nuanced. When we talk of mind, we have 4 dimensions of mind. We have the memory, we have the intellect, the buddhi, we have the dimension of mind which is ahankara, which is egotistical, as well as we have chitta as a dimension of mind. And when we are talking of thought as reflecting mind as in colonial mindset, we are actually, we have to confront with these kind of categories that we use and the indigenous Indian traditions, which is much more nuanced, and therefore when we use language in a particular way, then we have the problem of also colonizations of mind. Therefore, the past play is about decolonizations, is about to use different categories than the categories that have been used. And one of the major issues in this is about the category of knowledge. How do we get now? How do we get to truth? What is knowledge? And this is one of the major distinctions between the colonizer and colonized mindset. With Copernican, Descartes or Cartesians and Baconian as well as Newtonian revolutions, where they challenge Aristotelian scholasticism with its emphasis on authority, they brought about mind-night dichotomy. There are 3 major changes which happened with regard to how do I get truth, how do I realize the truth, what is knowledge. What emerged out, I don't have time to look at, Jung, Locke, Descartes, as well as Baconian traditions. But the one thing that emerged is that this physical universe is a realm of matter, and this is separate from mind, issue of soul. Therefore, in these propositions, it challenged not only the importance of authority as in Aristotelianism as well as in Christendom, it also talked about, it also challenged the hierarchy that Aristotle proposed. Therefore, the new knowledge traditions which call us scientificism, with its emphasis on deductive and inductive method, and the realm of God and realm of matter being separate, the hierarchy, the unity that was there in Aristotelian scheme as well as in Indic philosophy, that was broken. Therefore, this new scientificism with its basic premise that in the proposition regarding the discrete phenomena, in the proposition lies both the sufficient as well as necessary conditions of finding out the truth. And this is how the earlier both scholasticism as well as Indian traditions differ. That the phenomena of the natural world is different from that of mind, and the phenomena of the earth can be studied discretely, and in the proposition itself there is both the sufficient as well as necessary conditions of finding out the truth. One of the results of this new knowledge system that Francis Bacon talked about or Newton talked about is the divorce of religion from science, the divorce of text and philosophy from science. A new language emerged in order to explain this realm of matter, which is mathematics as explicated in Principia Mathematica. Therefore, this is one source of conflict between this colonial and colonized mindset. Is about how we approach knowledge. And the death of God that Nietzsche talks of largely springs from the disassociations of God from the realm of matter, because man believed that a new kind of secular eschatology emerged as a result of this science, a new mark of salvation which positivism talks about in the form of a telos, in the form of ultimate progress, and therefore, in a sense, that God's world or the physical manifestations of God's mind can be studied scientifically in terms of suggestions, led to almost the death of not only God as Nietzsche talks of, it also talks about the unity that existed between mind and matter, between the hierarchy of knowledge that existed and the hierarchy of authority as Aristotle described. This is one major area where colony and colonialism differed. And this provides a sense of mastery over nature and mastery of people who are not in this linear history of reaching ultimate progress, a tailors to which the Western civilizations was going towards. Therefore, this belief in the implicit superiority of scientism is reflected in our education system, and I have talked, taken this from Macaulay's Minute of 1835, where he says that I have covered both here at home in main distinguished as proficiency in these contents. I have never found one among them who would deny that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabic. Honors might be roughly, this is what we say that our knowledge system is superior, and the new language of English provides a clue to reach out to the new knowledge systems. I don't have to quote them. The second aspect is the Western way of life. Order, law, humanism, civility, discipline, democracy, all that we associate with liberal West. To this added, therefore, the responsibility of bringing about these through the Western rule. White man's order of enduring glory of empire, and then rootward and Gorgian's idea of empire, an essential part of natural history, an intrinsic idea, not a pioneering venture. Therefore, civilizing mission is an essential part of the natural history. The Raj was considered, therefore, India was blessed by Queen's peace, and I told you, this was achieved through many modalities. Long before post-colonialism of Foucault, governmentality, knowledge and power relations emerged, Bernard Kuhn in his knowledge and power relationship talked about various modalities through which this superiority of Western civilizations was taught to Indians. Um, I don't have time to go through the characteristics of these binaries, but Bernard Code talks about survey modality, observer come, travel modality, musical modality, surveillance modality, which Foucault also talks of, and these are the modalities in which these binaries were perpetuated, and therefore, but as I told you, it was not, dominance without hegemony, or dominance with only hegemony. There are always different voices, and both, as we look at the protest movement as well as the responses to the intimate enemies, we see, for example, Dayananda Saraswati straight away found meaning as well as substance in reinvigorating the nations through the ancient scriptures. Bankim Chandra, Raja Ram Mohan Rai, and others tried a departure, but locating within the Indic traditions. A much more comprehensive critique came from Hind Swaraj of Gandhi, but the moment of arrival of Western civilizations, Western value system, Western democracy, Western so-called scientific knowledge or scientific temper came with the arrival, as Partha Chatterjee talks of in with Nehruvian secularism and civic nationality. I'll wind up in one. And therefore, much we try because these values, for example, whether we believe in democracy, in humanism, and whether how do we create a hierarchy of knowledge where also mind matter dichotomy doesn't exist are all challenges. I don't have time because I thought that it will be 20 minutes. But let me sum up the challenges that we have. One of the challenges is the challenge of categories. Therefore, I believe that the first start to this would come from a new kind of education systems. If you look at the differences between Jnana and Vijnana, whereas Indic knowledge tradition talks about both the importance of Vijnana as well as Jnana, it talks about the superiority of Jnana, and this superiority of Jnana is at one level intuitive grasping of the unified reality, whereas Vijnana, whereas science is much more discrete, where we have a proposition which can be verified or falsified. This dichotomy needs to break at certain time, where we have a knowledge system which starts with sense contingent perceptions as the basis of knowing to unified reality as intuitively grasped, and therefore Indic knowledge system talks about the importance of raising the consciousness rather than knowing the external reality. Therefore, Indic knowledge system talks about hierarchy of consciousness, hierarchy of mind, and therefore we have both the, for example, Vasubandhu's Abhidharma Kosha, Maitreya, and there are many others. Pratna Vijnana, Alaya Vijnana, all talks about consciousness. Both the Hindu traditions as well as Buddhist traditions talk about this higher level of consciousness through which the unified reality can be intuitively grasped, but the lower level of knowledge, such as logic, such as mathematics, is equally important. Therefore, we need to decide and design a kind of curriculum where we have this dichotomy that existed or that forms the very basis of Western civilization, mind matter dichotomy, soul dichotomy, the language dichotomy of which analytical philosophers like Wittgenstein and others also confronted. Whether knowledge can be expressed mathematically or can be expressed through philosophically with the use of language. The second is about these separations between Jnana and Vijnana. The third is the use of categories. I told you about the importance that was given to consciousness, and therefore a revamping of education system where Sanskrit is given importance, where not only Hindu but Buddhist logic and philosophy is also taught, and the modality through which this gap between intuitive knowledge and perceptual knowledge is bridged up. It's a very challenging task. And the categories, therefore, and once we do that, some categories will emerge. And these categories are not binaries as appear today. Thank you so much. I took almost more than 20 minutes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Umakanta Mishra, for that talk of yours. It reminded me of a very small essay of Nayantara Sahagal, The Schizophrenic Mind. Okay, now we will go to listen to Dr. Chittaranjan Mishra, who is Professor, Head of English, former Head of English of Department, PTD College. And sir, the audience is waiting to listen. Sir, please.
Respected Professor Kar and the distinguished speakers like Professor Mishra, Professor Acharya, Professor Madhusmita, Professor Pandey, and the distinguished audience. First, I must express my thankfulness to Professor Upendra Padi for giving me this opportunity of sharing some of my views on this topic, colonial mindset and beyond. So this colonial mindset in India is a deep-rooted mindset that evolved out of our 200 years of interaction and living with the colonizers. And it is very hard to do away with a very deep-rooted, deep-seated notion that becomes a part of our mind and cope with the liberated identity that we have acquired after 1947. And even after so many years of liberation, we cannot say that we have already purged our mind from our colonial hangover and colonial mindset, which is not very much visible, but we have to look at the whole history of political agitation to the multicultural situation of India and where now India is assuming the global leadership. So in what I have done is I have referred to certain literary texts, certain old texts of colonial times, and also certain literary writings of our times, so that I can discuss with reference to the way the colonizers represented us. So I have referred to 6 acres and a third. I have referred to Frida Haswin-Dass's novel and also Manoj Das's story, and also George Orwell, and particularly his essay, Shooting the Elephant. So in all these literary writings, I have tried to trace the animalized or the bestial representation that the colonizers had for us, or the colonizer had represented us in terms of certain animal metaphors. So it is very interesting to trace and analyze those animal metaphors and also see how we have grown with those kinds of representation. So the colonial mindset in India refers to the attitudes and behaviors that were instilled in the Indian population during the British colonial rule, which lasted for almost 200 years. During this period, the British imposed their own culture, values, and beliefs on the Indian people, often with the aim of subjugating them and exploiting their resources. The colonial mindset is characterized by a submission to and endorsement of the ways the colonizers represented our land and our people. After 75 years of independence, traces of the same kind of subservience are still lurking in our subconscious, and the injustices of our culture needs to be cleared of the weeds. European modernity expanded, seeking profits, resources, and labor outside Europe, which led to the discovery of sea routes and conquest. This led to colonialism or settlement of colonies by the whites in non-white world. The colonial masters subjected the natives not merely through military power, but by making the natives believe in the colonizers' superiority and their own images as the former's order. This was made possible through British system of education, law, and religion. Fanon, in this context, in the context of Algeria and its French colonial occupation, argued that for the repressed and suffering native, colonialism destroyed the very soul. The colonial master's constant representation of the native as non-human, animalized thing annihilates the identity of the native. The native, through the process of colonization, begins to see himself through the eyes of the colonizer and loses his sense of self and identity. He sees himself as an evil, primitive, and believes that he is like an animal to be tamed by the master. In this context, a metaphor of horse used in Fakir Mohan Senapati's novel Chawmana Atagunta, or 6 acres and a third, which is set in colonial Indian society during the early decades of 19th century, comes to mind. Toward the end of Mangara's story, he is punished by the law, and we hear how the Judge Sahib ordered that his landed estate, his jamindari, be taken away. It is sold to a lawyer who, as rumor in the village has it, will come with 10 palanquins, followed by 5 horses and 200 foot soldiers to take possession of Mangaraja's large estate. The ordinary villagers react to this news by reminding one another of an old saying, "O horse, what difference does it make to you if you are stolen by a thief? You do not get much to eat here, you will not get much to eat there. No matter who becomes the next master, we will remain his slaves. We must look after our own interest." So Satya P. Mahanti, who has written the introduction to the translated volume of 6 acres and a third, published by Penguin, writes, this novel has been written from the perspective of the horse, the ordinary villager, and the foot soldier. In other words, the laboring poor of the world. Although it contains a critique of British colonial rule, the novel offers a powerful indictment of many other forms of authority, social and political as well. So as long as the attitude of the colonized remain identified with animal like a horse, it requires a horseman to be ridden, controlled, and trained. Once the identification is ruptured and the complicity is exposed, the colonized tries to recover his sense of self. The anti-colonial consciousness restores him as human and not an animal. Since it is regarded as the first Indian novel to deal with the exploitation of landless peasants by a feudal lord in British India, the decolonizing agenda of the novel are being discussed by academics from different perspectives. So the reference to horse is implicated with more meanings than the one stated above. Animals in the Indian culture and religions are worshipped as deities and carry symbolic meanings. The avatars of Vishnu, the Vahanas associated with deities, have continued a tradition of looking at animals as more than brutes. But the colonizers' way of looking at the colonized at beasts had a singular implication. Once the options to escape the bestialized representation was to reclaim the religious significance of the Indian ecocentric practices. The exploitative nature of colonial system was against the collaborative collective lifestyles of pre-colonial period. The mythic and the mystic foundations of Indian culture had to be resurrected as a basis for decolonization. Gandhi's idea of passive resistance, his notion of Swaraj, and assertion of moral superiority can be seen as a strategic step in this direction. Thinkers of post-colonialism emphasize the importance of resurrection of identity on the part of natives before becoming truly anti-colonial. Anti-colonial struggles are fought at the ideological, cultural, and economic levels, let alone armed retaliation. George Orwell, in his essay, Shooting an Elephant, recounts the experience of killing an elephant in Burma as a police officer. The essay reveals more about the process of colonization than an individual memoir. It describes the experience of the English narrator. I quote, possibly Orwell himself, called upon to shoot an aggressive elephant while working as a police officer in Burma. Because the local expect him to do the job, he does so against his better judgment. His anguish increased by the elephant's slow and painful death. The story is regarded as a metaphor for colonialism as a whole, and for Orwell's view that when the white man turns tyrant, it is his own freedom that he destroys. Unquote. He was stuck between his hatred of the empire he served and his rage against the colonized people he described as the evil-spirited little beasts who tried to make his job impossible. Orwell writes, when Orwell was on the horseback trying to locate the elephant, the people, 2,000 people were following him, and they were expecting that now the SDP or the police officer would shoot the elephant. But the moment Orwell discovered the elephant, it was not in an excited state or the masked state. The elephant was quite normal and it was in a paddy field, and he did not like to kill the huge animal. But he felt that if he was not going to shoot the elephant, then it would be a slur against his role as a British police officer and to uphold the rampage of the colonizer, he, against his own individual will, tried to shoot the elephant. And this very essay is very interesting because it speaks about the colonizer and the colonized. The individual, as an individual, Orwell had many thoughts, many conflicts in his mind. So he says, at this moment, as I stood there with my rifle in my hand, that I first grasped the hollowness of the futility of the white man's dominion in the East. Here was I, the white man with his gun, standing in front of the unarmed native crowd, seemingly the leading actor of the piece. But in reality, I was only an absurd puppet, pushed to and fro by the will of those yellow faces behind. I perceived in this moment that when the white man turns tyrant, it is his own freedom that he destroys. So he was sort of hollow posing dummy, the conventionalized figure of a Sahib. He realized the white man must not be frightened in front of the natives, and so he is not frightened. The sole thought in his mind was that if anything went wrong, those 2,000 Burmans would see him caught, trampled, and reduced to a grinning corpse like that Indian up the hill. And if that happened, it was quite probable that some of them would laugh. That would never do. So this suggests an aspect of what happens in the mind of the colonized. The colonized also nourishes an image of the colonizer, and that is how the people of Burma expected their police officer, their British police officer, to shoot the elephant, and that is how the native tries to emulate, trust, and get fascinated by the colonizer, by the master. Then there is a reference in my article to Frida Haswit Das, who was married to Sarangdar Das, and Frida has written many books, many novels, and one is Marriage to India. But what I have referred to here is Leak Home and Gentle Brown. It is a novel written about monkeys. The characters in the whole novel is of monkeys and jungles of Odisha. And there is an encounter between a sadhu and a white chief engineer, Mr. Farrows. And Farrows and the sadhu, they meet, and the sadhu speaks in perfect British accent in the deepest jungle of Orissa. The British chief engineer meets an Odia sadhu, Sadhu Anand, who doesn't behave in an obsequious manner, and he speaks in perfect accent, British Oxford accent. And he says, I can read out, your Christ has called all men children of one Father, equal before his shining face. Your Christ has spoken of brotherly love. What have you made of it, you people of the West? With your race arrogance, you have planted deep seeds of hatred instead of weaving bonds of love. Instead of protecting, you have exploited all over the wide world your brothers, whose faces are not colorless like your own. You have turned the greatness of your brain to the service of the gods of destruction and acquisition, and away from service to your Christ. Instead of loving your enemies, you have invented frightful engines of war to destroy them, and you are calling upon your God to bless these and your country, right or wrong. Can this God be the Father of your Christ? You send us emissaries in His name and back them with guns. So this is what the white writer Frida has written about British colonialism in India. So all the colonizers, or all who belong to the white skin, doesn't endorse the view of the colonizers, because the profit of colonialism only goes to a particular sector of the people, not all the people of the colonized country. So then they thought, I'll take only, I will not take much time. So now that we are liberated and now we find the harrowing tales of famine, the loss of estates in Odisha by sunset laws, the untold tales of the martyrs of Odisha, the rescuing of Odia language and formation of the state of Odisha are coming to surface. The contemporary story writers, short story writers and novelists are taking it up. So, but always the colonizer imposes a single story. I think many of us might have watched that video which is going viral through WhatsApp, and I also watched that TED talk by Chimamanda Adichie, and she's young, and she tells about the threat or the danger of the single story. The danger of the single story is the colonial or colonizer story about the colonized. So they try to proliferate, they try to popularize India as an uncivilized place, as a country of snake charmers, occult, magicians. They have represented Africa as a dark continent. And Adichie says that this is the single story. And what is the danger of the single story? The danger of the single story is that it robs men of their dignity. So now the dignity seems to have been restored because the mindset is trying to be changing, or the old mindset is gradually being replaced by new thoughts, new ideas, new dreams of the post-colonial vision. So at the end, I refer to a story of Manoj Das, he who wrote The Tiger. Now there is a tiger in trap, and
in the meantime, the guest of honor this fourth plenary session at Utsav, Odisha, Madam Umanandiri, Joint Secretary, Ministry Culture, Government of India, they arrived, and our Vice Chancellor is also with her. We formally welcome Madam Umanandiri to Utsav, Odisha to this plenary session. She is the guest of honor, and Madam Umanandiri is the brain behind of this Utsav, Odisha. When we talk about this Utsav, Odisha planning and everything in Delhi, she helped us a lot, and she is also looking after the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav initiative and G20 initiative of Ministry of Culture, and we are very happy to receive Madam Umanandiri with us today. Now I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sabita Acharya, to felicitate Madam Umanandiri as the guest of honor this Utsav, Odisha.
ବସନ୍ତୁ ଆଜ୍ଞା।
so I was referring to Manoj Das's story. There, a tiger is trapped, and the king and all his officials in power, they want to ride the tiger. Ultimately, the prince is ordered by the king to ride the tiger. He rides the tiger, and tiger takes him into the deep jungle, and after 2 hours, when the king searches for his son is no more. only a piece of cloth the king's men bring from the jungle. So that is how many of us are trying to look at power, and everybody wants to ride the tiger without being responsible. And there is also the metaphor of tiger referred to in a novel by Aravinda Adiga, The White Tiger. So that white tiger tries to break free from the rooster coop and wants to emerge as a successful man, the protagonist of the novel. So he represents the rural people who wants to grow rich and go out of darkness. But in that novel, who is a white tiger, who is a rare beast, who has the talent, is misdirected and takes the unethical ways to rise in life. So at the end, um, I can say that now the world has become flat, as Friedman says, and everybody has the power and scope and opportunity to compete with each other, not only in the world of business, but at all levels of life. But um, the ability of individuals to connect and collaborate on a scale, on an unprecedented scale, has given us new opportunity and new challenges. Today in India, um, our people are assuming leading positions in the corporate world, and that has annulled the perverse representation of Indians as colonial subjects. The post-national writings by Indian writers are marked by multiple stories, not the single story, from partition to diasporic, cutting across boundaries of nations and histories. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for that talk. Now we have amidst us the guest of honor for this program, Ms. Uma Nandu and she has already been introduced. Now I invite her to give the talk.
Namaskar, distinguished the speakers and dignitaries on the dais, Professor Nishwani Karam, Dr. Umakant Mishra ji, Chittaranjan Mishra ji, Professor Virendra Pandey ji, Professor Durga Prasad Acharya ji, Professor Madhusmita Pati, and our VC Savita Acharya, and all the distinguished persons who are present on the dais. I take it is a proud privilege for me to come back to Odisha. I belong to Odisha cadre. I can speak Odia fluently, so there is no problem. मुझे बहुत भल लगुची आज ये ओडिशा रे आसिकरी आपण माने सामने रे रहिबा और कथाबार्ता करिबा बहुत आनंद लगुची I am joint secretary in Ministry of Culture looking after Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. So this is the subject which you have picked up, the colonial mindset and beyond. This is very, very important on the eve of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. We have achieved 75 years of Indian independence, but still then we are carrying the baggage of colonial mindset. So that is our problem, and this colonial mindset is reflected predominantly in some places and in a subtle way in some other places. But still, whether it is explicitly or implicitly, it is there everywhere. So, and if you can see, I have gone to Andamans recently, about 1.5 months back. You will be surprised. I think some of you must have visited Andamans. Those islands names, Ross Island, Havelock Island. So these kind of names, all Britishers' names, all these islands are named by Britishers, by their kith and kin and all. So now, slowly these names are getting changed. With our Honorable Prime Minister in 2022, August 15th, from the Red Fort, he has stated Panchapran. The main thing in Panchapran is that two things I could state being from the culture department. One is that having cultural pride. of your own pride. Okay? The second thing is that getting away, shunning away this colonial mindset. So these are the two main major aspects. What is this colonial mindset? Where it is happening? It is there in everything, in your food, for example. And eating Western food is no problem, but having not pride in our own food is a problem. We should like pakhada bhato or chuda ghasa the same way we like burger. So then only we should have a cultural pride. We can't say that pakhada is bad and burger is good. How can it be? Both the things are good. सबका अपना अपना टेस्ट है, अपना अपना स्वाद है, but everything is good. So that kind of pride, that kind of leadership, that kind of confidence we should have. And you see the language, we are having so many mother languages, and we should have a pride in speaking our own mother language. When two Odiyas मिलते हैं सामने, they try, and also in I belong to Andhra Pradesh. In two Andhra people they meet, they talk in English. Why? Again, that is a colonial mindset. Because we feel that English is better than our mother languages, and English is better than Sanskrit. Where all our scriptures are in Sanskrit, we should better, if at all कोई भी भाषा सीखनी है, हमको संस्कृत सीखना है. संस्कृत सीखे, हमारी देश, हमारी पहचान, हमारी संस्कृति, हमारा स्क्रिप्चर्स, ये सब जानना है. तो ये एक प्राइड है, कल्चरल प्राइड. आप तीसरा चीज, फेस्टिवल्स. Festivals, we have got so many n number of festivals. आपका उड़ीसा में भी है, सब जगह भारत में भी, आंध्र में होली, दिवाली और जो भी सावित्री और रजो फेस्टिवल, बहुत सारे फेस्टिवल्स हैं हम लोगों के देश में. रीजन वाइज फेस्टिवल्स है, नेशनल वाइज फेस्टिवल्स है. एवरी फेस्टिवल का जो है आप यू सी यंगर जनरेशंस, the people who belong to our generation, we celebrate the festivals with pride and fervor. When it comes to younger generations, they don't have that much pride in their own festivals. So this is again colonial mindset. We should come out of these mindsets. When it will come out, and also our education, gender. So in gender also we should make our boys also to learn everything. We not only girls, but that is not gender discrimination. Gender neutrality has to be there. Our girls should learn how the agriculture is done, and our boys should learn how the cooking is done. Everything is important. Until unless you know that, you don't know the value of it. Until unless you do that, you cannot give the value for that. So this is the way we have to work systematically to get out of this colonial mindset. And also the government of India and even the state government, all of us in fact, it is taking time. So there are several steps are being taken. You know, most of you must have visited Delhi. Delhi, in the India Gate के पास पहले जो स्टैचू होता था जॉर्ज किसका था उसका स्टैचू, किंग जॉर्ज 5 का स्टैचू होता था. अभी हमने वो स्टैचू हटा के नेताजी सुभाष चंद्र बोस का स्टैचू लगाया. अब इंडिया गेट के पास जाएंगे, आपको मैं अपनी तरफ से नहीं बोल रही हूँ, जो हमारे आशुचंद थी जमाने सेटे बोटे कर्तव्य बहुत अच्छी से कल्चरल प्रोग्राम बहुत हुए, और जमाने में आशुचंद से नेताजी स्टैचू को देख लिए ताको मनरे गर्व आसी जाए. ठीक है, मेरा नेताजी, मेरा इंडिया का, मेरा भारत का महान है, ये फीलिंग जो है. बिकॉज अदरवाइज पहले क्या था, किंग जॉर्ज 5 का स्टैचू है वहां पर इंडिया गेट में. किंग जॉर्ज 5 का स्टैचू आफ्टर 75 years of independence, is it good? No, it is just because we don't have confidence, we are not thinking in the direction, we are खूब मंडप होके हम अपने में सोच रहे हैं, इसलिए we are not able to come out of the colonial mindset. Earlier, when you take the ancient history, the foreign students used to come visit our Indian universities like Nalanda, Takshashila, all these universities. Now where are they coming? Any foreigners are going to Utsav University? No, no? At present, no. Yes. And that is the case with almost all the universities. So we should develop in such a way that foreigners should come and study at us. It is not that we go outside and drop them up. Okay, we can go, there's no problem. But at the same time, reading in Utkal University should have an equal pride reading in MIT. So that level comes only with when we shun away, when we jettison this colonial mindset. Okay? So I request, ये अभी भाषणबाजी करके यहाँ से चले जाके 1-2 दिन पार करने से कुछ फायदा नहीं है. तो फायदा जब ये होता है उत्कल यूनिवर्सिटी में आई रिक्वेस्ट द वाइस चांसलर उपेंद्र जी, जो आप लोग जो है कि आपने इंस्टीट्यूशन में आपका ऐसा कोई नियम है, कोई प्रैक्टिस है, कोई प्रथा है which is leading to the colonial mindset, आपको लग रहा है एटलीस्ट 2-3 प्रथा बंद करवाइए, 2-3 नियम कानून बंद करवाइए, तब जाके इसका फायदा है, ठीक है ना। अदरवाइज जो है कि हम लोग 7-8 लोग हैं, 7-8 लोग कुछ कुछ बोलेंगे, आप सुनेंगे, फिर कुछ ना कुछ हमको गाली देंगे, जो भी करेंगे, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that what practically we are able to implement, what is the takeaway from this conference, that we have to see. And I wish you all the best for this Utkal, this Parva. Yeah, Utkal Parva. Utsav Odisha. Utsav Odisha. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Uma Madam, for that talk, and you really emphasized on the fact that we should be proud of our own culture, our own practices, and somehow live a life which has a balance of the good of both the sides. Now I request Professor Virendra Pandey, who is Professor and Dean, Kids School of Language and Literature, Kidd University, to deliver a talk.
Good morning, honorable dignitaries on the dais and respectable ladies and gentlemen on the audience side. My paper is called Leveraging the Indian Para Model in Madhubani Painting Beyond Colonial Mindset. The idea for this paper came to me when one of my MPhil students was working under me, and when I looked at his first draft, he was completely going by what I would say the Western nonsense on Mithila painting, on Madhubani painting. Actually, let me tell you a little bit of history of Mithila painting. It was the year 1934 when the Nepal Bihar earthquake took place, and the then district magistrate, his name was William Archer of Darbhanga district in Bihar. Madhubani was not a district then. When houses were demolished, he could see so many of wall paintings in the broken houses. So it was he who first wrote about Madhubani painting in a journal that was being edited then by Munka Anand called Mark. His approach to Madhubani painting, particularly the wall painting, which we in Mithila we call Kohavar painting. Kohavar means nuptial chamber painting. He interpreted that heavily from Freudian notion of sex, slightly from notion of tantra. Then, almost 20 years thereafter, a French critic called Racquart, he interpreted it from tantric perspective, but his notion of tantra was quote unquote not Indian, it was rather Western, because in the late capitalist society of the West, tantra had been in a way like commercialized from a perspective of the logic of late capitalism. So his reading of the Tantric in Madhubani painting was not from indigenous Indian perspective, rather from the Western notion, I would say flawed notion of the Tantra. In the 1980s and early 1990s, two Indian scholars, very good scholars, one from Bihar and another I do not know, her name is Putul Jayakar. This is very renowned, but I do not know from which state she is. They interpreted Madhubani painting in their books, and their analysis was thinly touched by what I would say Indian Tantric perspective, but it was the Tantric interpretation was thin. In 1994, an American anthropologist, Caroline Hines, whose critical intervention in India and abroad is supposed to be very quote unquote iconic, I would say unfortunately iconic. She takes a very reprimanding, you say, tone, and she reprimands Archer, Quat, as well as Upendra Thakur, and even Pupul Jayakar, saying that there is no Tantrism at all in Mithila painting. Okay, so this is one episode. Another episode happened with me at KIT University. When I was teaching MA level students, Manoj Das, in a course called Literatures in Translation. As part of their CIA, they have to make a presentation. And I had assigned the presentation on Manoj Das. Two stories were prescribed. One was the crocodile lady, and the other was the tree. And student after student is making the presentation from the perspective of the post-colonial notion of magic realism. When I read the story, I did not find magic realism anywhere in the, at least in those two stories. Then I looked up on the net and I saw that two celebrated scholars on Manoj Das, both from India, they have interpreted Manoj Das from the perspective of magic realism. At least in though I haven't read, I should not pretend that I have read all of Manoj Das, but at least those two stories which I have read, I did not find magic realism there at all. Then I came across a book. Please go to the I found a book called This Decolonizing Theory, Thinking Across Traditions, written by Aditya Nigam. And in that book, he takes that Western literary theorists, Western philosophers, they come to India, they have a very thin understanding of India, they read something about India, that too written by Western scholars who do not have a very good understanding of Indian philosophy. And based on that, they theorize. And unfortunately, because that theorization is by a white scholar, professors in India, critics in India, they go crazy. Professor after professor, critic after critic will just quote them. So in that book, he's very particularly harsh on Slavoj Zizek, whose understanding of Vedic Hinduism as well as Tantric Hinduism, he shows how that is wrong. And he says that instead of even the post-colonial, when we say post-colonial, actually that word colonial also comes there, you see. So post-colonial is a departure to an extent from the colonial mindset, but it still comes under the colonial mindset. So So what he says in that book is that instead of that, as a respectable guest, Madam Nanduri, was saying, we should believe in our own indigenous knowledge system. We should have a positive attitude towards that and try to look at least things about our rural life, our rustic life, from purely indigenous perspective. So he uses two words there. One is the Quranic worldview, the para-modern worldview. And he says that much of India, particularly rural India, the worldview there is Quranic or the para-modern worldview. And he cites Tantra as one of Tantric way of life as one of that para-modern worldview. And he says that when we read anything, like for example, because my audience is from Odisha, so this is why I'm referring to Manoj Das. So when we read Manoj Das, because he is writing about rural Odisha, where his foregrounded theme is para-modernity, that way of life. So we should be reading from that perspective rather than the perspective of modernity. Because when we read from the perspective of modernity, that becomes a superimposition. So in this my presentation, I have taken Madhubani painting or Mithila painting because I come from Mithila. That is part of my culture and I know that rather well. So my argument there is that this presentation rethinks and relooks at lived Indian realities in rural Mithila to give shape to the frame of the para-modern so that it reveals itself away from the overarching mindset of Western modernity in the interpretation of two female Madhubani artists. One is Pushpa Kumari, contemporary artist. Another is old one, Padma Shri, Ganga Devi, celebrated Ganga Devi. In order to expose Eurocentricity of colonial and the post-colonial mode of knowledge production at work in the critical practice of art, but also it replaces it with an indigenous refiguration of the social and the philosophy. Yes. So review of literature I have already done. I don't need to do it. Go ahead. Next. Okay. So you see, this is on the left side. What you see is a woman in Mithila doing this wall painting. This wall painting is traditionally called cover painting. This is done on the occasion of marriage, and this wall painting is heavily influenced by Tantra, Shakta Tantra, mostly left-handed Tantra. So that is what this slide is saying. Next slide. Okay. In Mithila, when marriage takes place, there are two parallel sides. One is the marwa or the canopy in the courtyard that you see on the left-hand side. That is the Vedic way of marriage. But simultaneously, marriage also takes place inside the house. That is called Kovarga. This marriage is totally dominated by women. And if marriage on the Marwa puts a Vedic seal on marriage, this marriage in Kovarga puts, so to say, Tantric seal on marriage. Women, this marriage inside the Kovarga is totally monopolized by women, and they, in a way, perform Vashikaran. Vashikaran both on the bride and the bridegroom. So this is the way marriage takes place in Mithila. Okay, next slide. Yes. So by contextualizing Kovarga painting in this way, in the very marriage ritual of Mithila, what I have tried to show is that Mithila painting is heavily influenced by Shakta Tantrism. And this is a very contemporary painting. And what you see in this painting, contemporary painting, is the theme of this painting is Purush Prakriti, the act. And this concept is based on the concept of Ardhanarishwar. We have the Ardhanarishwar, half Lord as half male, Lord as half female. And this Lord as half male and Lord as half female, this is oneness. This idea of binarism, which is at the very center of the Western world. Okay, next slide. Then, again, this is again a contemporary Mithila painting, Madhubani painting. Here you see Kali is about to trample Lord Shiva. And this is a very radical action. And this action of Kali shows that Kali can take life, but life can also be given back. And in many cultures, including Mithila, some people they perform this ritual of having sex in the field. The husband and the wife will have sex in the field, and when they have sex in the field, it is not for pleasure. It is for it is a ritual. It is for productivity and agricultural cycle. So it flows from that worldview. Next. Next slide. Okay, this is Prakriti as Jagat Yoni. So you see Shakti or Prakriti giving birth to the first man, first child, and this first child, which Prakriti gives birth, that child needs to be nurtured. So in Shaktotantric philosophy, the emphasis is on attachment to and nurturance of the born rather than withdrawal and renunciation, which we find in Vedantic philosophy. Okay, next. This is again the spiritual and the material coexisting together. You see the elephant dotted with lotus. The elephant is a symbol of prosperity, and the lotus is a symbol of spirituality. Lotus can also be a symbol of materiality. Elephant too can be a symbol of spirituality as well as materiality. So again, this shows the coexistence of the material with the spiritual. Next. Next. Okay, next. Yeah, this is interesting. This is Nana Jogian. This is an icon which is placed in almost every traditional cover painting. This Nana Jogian is actually Kamakhya. Kamakhya at Kamrupa is known as Nona. Nona was the name of a Chamari. And this Nona, it is Avabhramsa. This name is an Avabhramsa. And she is supposed to be a witch. And her duty is to protect the newlyweds, the bride and the bridegroom, from evil eyes, and also at the same time be effective in performing or in the performance of Vashikara. Okay, next. This is the painting, this is the classic cover painting by Padma Shri Ganga Devi. And it is a painting of pride in the Jawaharlal Nehru Museum in New Delhi. See, the whole controversy that I referred to earlier in my presentation, the whole controversy is with regard to this very painting. In this painting, in the center, you see the bamboo and the lotus. So what semiotically this bamboo and the lotus mean? Bamboo and the lotus in Mithila painting socio-semiotically mean both fertility and buns, that is the multiplicity, but it also means the female sexual organ, lotus as the female sexual organ and bamboo as the male sexual organ. It also means that. And the whole critical controversy, that uh, the controversy that was raised by Caroline Brown Hines was about the semiotic meaning of this very thing. She is of the opinion that the bamboo doesn't mean the male sexual organ and the lotus doesn't mean the female sexual organ, which is not right. Because if you look at the marriage songs that is sung by women on the occasion of marriage, they clearly use the bamboo as symbolic of male sexual organ and lotus as the symbol of female sexual organ. They would, there are some songs in which they say it is a marriage between the bamboo and the lotus. And also in this painting, in the center upwards, if you see, that is the kundalini which arises here and it goes up to here. That has been shown in that painting. That becomes clear from the next slide. Yeah, there. That the upper part has been taken from that painting, and this is a sectional view. So here you see how the sexual activity that is supposed to take place here, how that leads to liberation. How that leads to liberation. Okay, that has been shown there in that painting by Ganga Devi. So, through my analysis, what I have done is that I have tried to prove that Archer is wrong, backward is wrong, so is Brown. So, what should be our approach? Our approach should be indigenous. So, let me now come to conclusion. So my conclusion is just this. I will just read out the last paragraph. Brown treats Mithila nothing more than a field of not so literate native informants. After all, her worldview, which is a priori, divests the para-modern life in Mithila of its compositoriness, for which the colonial and post-colonial mindsets have no credible replacement. So this is why, through my presentation, I think I have made a credible case that what is our indigenous thing, we should be studying those indigenous things from indigenous perspective rather than bringing in the Western thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. Now we have with us Professor Durga Prasad Acharya, former head of the English department, SVM College at Singapore. Sir, please.
So, I think I will not colonize your mind ground. Esteemed speakers, esteemed chairperson, dear friends, and dignitaries. We are here to discuss colonial mindset. The topic is New India, colonial mindset and beyond. I think the main thrust of the topic should be on the word beyond. What does it mean? Have we gone beyond the colonial mindset? What is colonialism? Everybody knows what is colonialism, what is colonial mindset. We know colonialism means political domination. Colonialism means psychological domination, cultural domination, and different kinds of other subjections and subjugations. Have we gone beyond that mindset? No, we have not gone beyond that mindset. And new India will emerge only when we go beyond go beyond these talks, go beyond this what I can bondage of colonialism that which is there in our mind. And this cannot be achieved with some stray and token measures that we have been taking. Yes, colonialism is there very much affecting us. It is there in our mind. We are not yet free from that biting sense inferiority complex. We think we are inferior, and that has been dinned into our mind by our colonial rulers. They are the main chief aim of the colonial people, of the Britishers, of all those people of the West. Their main purpose was to make us belittle our culture, belittle our religion, and their purpose was to make us follow them, imitate them, emulate them. They say, so that now when we are trying to decolonize ourselves, when we are trying to put an end to this kind of colonial mindsets, again we are falling prey to the intellectual, cultural, and other frameworks that have been made by the people of the West. The people, the thinkers of the West, the so-called thinkers of the West, they tell us, oh Indians, you can assert your identity, you can assert your Indianness, if only you can go to your past, if only you can assert your identity. The West is telling us to promote, nurture the culture of identity. But we Indians, we are not used to believe in this cult of identity. Because ours is the land of Sankaracharya, ours is the land of the Vedic seers who have taught us, who have told us, no, it is inclusivity, it is all embracing nature which is required. No identity. We have sacrificed our identity in the ocean of super consciousness, in the ocean of consciousness. So there is no question of asserting our identity. When we want to assert our identity, when we want to promote the culture of identity, what happens? Now we fall prey to bigotry, we fall prey to fanaticism, we fall prey to harmful fundamental thinking, fundamentalism. I am not telling you here that all kinds of fundamental thinking is wrong. But yes, we Indians must go beyond the what we can say, beyond the prescriptions that have been given to us by the Western people. The West wants us to tell them that yes, our past is that, our past was glorious, and they also want us to show them our poverty. They also want to show them that we are a land of snake charmers. They also want us to tell them about our rope tricks. No, we have to show them we are not a country of snake charmers. We are rather now the modern Indians. We are not a snake charmers, we are mouse charmers. You know very well. Our young younger generation, they are excelling in the field of IT. They are excelling in the field of computer knowledge. Why? It is because there is something in our psyche, there is something in our consciousness which makes us imbibe, which makes us which makes us follow the things without sacrificing our own essential nature. What is our essential nature? What is the civilizational ethos of India? If somebody asks us, what is your greatness? First thing I will tell one thing. Our greatness is this. After 5,000 years, we Indians, our civilization civilization lives. Why does it live? Why doesn't it die like the civilization of Egypt? Why doesn't it die like the civilization of Greek? Why do we still revere our seers, our rishis? Why? This is our uniqueness. This is our civilization ethos. That is why we are still existing as a democracy. Nowhere in the world a country like India has a democracy. India is it is a multi-religious country. It is a country of multi-sects. It is a country of many languages, many diversities. Diversities galore. But in spite of all these things, we Indians, we are still following, we are still celebrating our past, we are still worshipping our past. Why? This is our civilization ethos, and we have to promote this. And this will not be promoted if only we go on abusing the West. No, we have to follow, we have to imbibe the good things of the West, and we have to also imbibe the good things of our past. We cannot take everything of our past to be sacrosanct. We cannot take everything that the West says to be sacrosanct or to be great. No, the Western civilization, as speakers have pointed out, the Western civilization has given importance to binaries. Jacques Derrida, the deconstruction theorist, he has said that the Western civilization is based on binaries. What is binary? Rational, emotional. They say we are rational, you Indians are emotional. Feminine, masculine. This is binary. Black and white. For the Western people, black is black, white is white. Rational is rational, emotional is emotional. But we Indians, we believe in a kind of blending. We blend masculinity and femininity. That is why we have Ardhanarishwara. That is why the image of Ardhanarishwara we have attributed the feminine qualities to Shiva. Shiva, who is the master, who is the icon of masculinity, he has been presented as Ardhanarishwara. Why? Why has this happened? It is because Indians knew, our seers know that truth is not absolute. No idea, no concept is absolute. Ours is the land of Joina philosophy, Anekantavada. What is Anekantavada? The Western people, they don't know these things. Why? Because they believe in everything, they believe in absolute things. For them, their prophet is absolute. Their scripture is absolute. Their ideas are absolute. But we Indians, we don't say that. We say, you are right and he is right, I am right. I remember a funny story told about Mullah Nasiruddin. Mullah Nasiruddin was once asked to sit up on the seat of the judgment. The king said to Mullah Nasiruddin, for today you will be the judge. Then Mullah became the judge. The complainant came and he said, he has robbed me, he has stolen my property, he has stolen this thing, so he should be punished. Mullah said, yes, you are right, you will be punished. The defendant, he came, he said, no, I have not stolen all these things, I should not be punished. Mullah said, you are right. You see, the defendant is right, the complainant is right. Then the king asked Mullah, oh Mullah, what kind of strange judgment you are giving? Mullah said, no, you are also right. You see, the king is right, the complainant is right. So what does it mean? It means truth is not absolute. The West has told us that yes, you believe you should take our thing, this thing to be truth, this thing to be absolute. And we Indians, we are blindly following that, we are forgetting, no, there was a Bhartuhari in our civilization, in our past, The second is Shrungar Sataka, Kama Shastra, Shrungar Sataka, love, romance, Shrungar Sataka. And the third is Niti Sataka, morality. You see, and Bhartwari was a king and he was also saint. So a sage also wrote Shrungar Sataka. You see on our temples, on Konarka, Ajanta, all those things. You see the nude what statues and so Western people who have that Victorian morality. So they have given us that Victorian morality. We Indians, we don't have any kind. We do not believe in any kind of particular. This is moral. This is immoral. No, because we believe that God is both. Our God is Nirguna and Saguna. Our God is Nirguna and Saguna. But their God is not Nirguna, he is Saguna. But our God has all the attributes. He is both good and evil. There is a line in Bhagavata that is, Oneko baro mote mari, hede notaru norahari, Konsa kahuchi, are mu to barambar asini, tu mote marichu, mote tu hiranaksha bhavde, mote bodha karithilu, puni mu Ravana bharam marithlu, puni mote bortan maruchu. Tahale tu mote ke kaରଣ କାଇଁ କରୁନାହୁ? Oneko baro mote mari hede notaru norahari. What does it mean? It means evil is co-eternal. Good is also divinity is eternal. Evil is also divine. Evil comes from which source? Evil also comes from the source of super consciousness, of that consciousness. So we Indians, we have this kind of belief. We don't believe in binaries. We don't believe in that. So this is our. So if we want to go beyond all these things, we have to stop talking about the need for decolonizing ourselves. No, forgetting is remembrance. If we go on harping on about our past, harping on the injustices that have been done to us, then we will not forget those injustices and we cannot march ahead. We have to go ahead, we have to march forward, and we have to assimilate, adapt. We have to, because Indian civilization is a civilization adaptation, adjustment, and assimilation. This assimilation should be we should assimilate our culture and their culture, and we should not jettison their culture. Telling that is colonial culture. No, yeah, if there is something good in that culture, okay. If there is something life enriching in that culture, fight that. We should follow that. If there is some life enlightening things in our past, in our we should also follow that. So there should this is how we can go beyond the colonial mindset. But if we always go on thinking that yes, injustices have been done, we have West has done this thing to be the colonial powers have done these things, then we cannot go beyond. We have to forget and forgive. We have to forget and forgive. No, but some say we may forgive, but we cannot forget. No, the time comes when we have to. If we want to go beyond, if we want to emerge from that trap, the trap that has been there in our mind, we have to go. We have to forget. We have to pardon, forgive, and we have also to forget those things, and we have to go forward, march forward, fare forward and fare well also, fare forward and fare well. Okay, so this is I think perhaps the things that we should know about this new India colonial mindset. There are many things. I am not using any jargon. There is plenty jargons we can use. We can talk about the things which have always been talked about, which have all people have been talking for so many years, for so many days. But now the time has come. You see, English. Now I am speaking English. English, this is the irony, this is the conundrum of colonialism. Is English a colonial language? Does it mean that I have a colonial mindset? I think no. I rather believe in the poet Kamala Das. In her poem An Introduction, Kamala Das has said, I am an Indian. I am a female. I was born in Malabar. I speak 3 languages. I write in 2, dream in 1. The language I speak is my own. So the English, I am writing in English, I am speaking English. English has become my own language with all its peculiarities, with all its anomalies, with all its distortions. This language is also mine. So don't ever say that English is a colonial language. No, English has become an Indian language, like our Odia, like our Sanskrit. And we have to also know, we have to enrich our language with from English language, and also we have to enrich English through our languages. That is, this is called pizza effect. There is a term, pizza, you know, pizza, people eat pizza effect. What is pizza effect? Pizza effect is this: culture evolution. There is a constant perennial evolution of culture. Culture, that is acculturation. So one culture is influenced, impacted by another culture and another culture. So this kind of this kind of give and take is always going on between cultures. This is pizza effect. So we have to remember that yes, our culture must be, will be influenced by other cultures, and their culture will also be influenced by our culture. And it is also our duty to tell them, yes, we are not a snake charmers. We are a country where there was Udhayan, where there was Panini, where there was Patanjali, Yoga Shastra. From our six shastras, Saradarsana, the six darsana ଭିତରେ ଛଅଟା ଦର୍ଶନ ଚାରି ଦର୍ଶନ ହେଉଛି ଆମର ନାସ୍ତିକ ଦର୍ଶନ, ସେଥିରେ ଈଶ୍ୱର ଦର୍ଶନ ନାହିଁ। କିଏ କହେ, who said that India is a country of only religious thinking? No, we have produced legions and legions of secular literature. We have produced legions and legions of literature which has nothing to do with spirituality, which has nothing to do with religion. So why do we say that we are not rational or we are not scientific? No, we were scientific, but our scientific temper was different from the scientific temper that the OS is propagating. This much we should remember. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Durga Prasad Acharya. Now I would like to invite Professor Nishamani Kara to give the closing remarks.
Good afternoon, friends. Now we are back to the point where we started. They say seminars, symposia, and all these meetings, they are the points where minds act, react, and interact. Much of action and reaction is done, but the interaction is avoided. So I would request anybody from the audience, if at all they do have any query, they may ask at least a couple of questions so that it can be answered by our learned speakers. Say it for them. Two questions only. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Myself, Prashant Panda, ex-professor political science, and at present a constitutional body member in Government of India, and ex-advocate senior advocate Odisha High Court. And so it is that my question is very brief. Why, in spite of all these churnings, after 75 of independence, though very different pedigree that runs in the veins of other professors, students, why the colonial baggage, still some people are carrying. And in the meantime, I heard from professors that white elephant is moving and somebody wanted to shut it down. My question is, why? That elephant was not dead, but why white elephants are still dominating? Please answer.
So this was an observation, very nice. Uh, so since we do have the limited time, let me just sum it up. Friends, we had uh, Professor Maganta Misra speaking about binary hierarchies. He also hinted at the intimate enemy, that is the assassin of this book. But I'll just add another, that is the psychology of colonialism, sex, age, and ideology in British India. The other one, the uncolonized mind, post-colonial view of India and the West. So it is my request to the participants and to the listeners, if at all you get the chance, please go through these books. Then we had Chittaranjan Misra. He has referred to so many texts, and he has hinted at the animal metaphors and particularly literary texts. I am very happy he has referred to that Chauman account and how Pokemon and was equally unique in its own way. Then Umananduri, Joint Secretary, she gave a couple of examples that the present government has taken up in order to make us free from the colonized wage, from the colonial baggage. Then Professor Pandey, in a very original way, he referred to Madhubani Pentix, the Tantric cult, and all these things. And lastly, my friend, my younger brother, Professor Acharya, in its typical ways, he has arrested our attention. We are all drawn, to his deliberation. I don't have the time to speak, but I'll share a couple of points. Friends, to me, Gandhi was perhaps, Gandhi means I mean Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, he was perhaps the most decolonized mind. Why do I say so? Because Gandhi was born and brought up in the colonized city, but he had never thought about the white man's burden. For him, the Britishers are important. Equally important is the Indian approach to life, Indian traditional thing. That is how he is going through a balanced point of view. That is taking this side and that side, as Professor Acharya time and again hinted at. So most decolonized mind is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Therefore, he was Hinduizing the Congress. Yes, that is a phrase newly coined, Hinduizing. He was Hinduizing the Congress, but at the same time he was telling, open your doors and windows so that the wind from outside will enter into your doorstep. So that is perhaps the right approach. I'm now inspired to share a particular incident with you. That is some centuries back, one Indian savant, Indian scholar, met Socrates. This is the account given by Aristophanes. I'm just referring to that. In course of his conversation to Socrates, he asked, "What are you dealing with?" Socrates answered, "We deal with human beings. We deal with the ways and means, how the man will have a very meaningful life, economic aspect of life, political aspect of life, this, that, philosophical aspect." Then our Indian scholar, the savant, do you know what he told? How do you go to the branch without going to the roots? How do you think about man without knowing the source? The source is God. So we Indians believe in God. Spiritualism is our forte. They may call us irrational. They may put us in the other side of the binary. I don't mind. But spirituality, positive approach to life, The philosophy being Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Markas Chittu Kabhat Bhavat. What a philosophy. Well, what a philosophy it is. What an approach to life. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. With this, let me conclude. Thank you.
It was indeed a privilege to be here and to listen to all the speakers, and I have this huge responsibility of giving the vote of thanks. And having listened to all of them, and first my most heartfelt thanks to Professor Upendra Badi for inviting us all here and making us sit and think about a topic which is part of our day-to-day life, that we are still living in both the worlds, the hangover world, and a world which we want to throw away that hangover, but it is not going. So, thank you, Professor Nisamani Kaura, for the opening remarks as well as the conclusion. And using direct welcome's poem was very apt. I am thankful to you for using that. And Dr. Umakanta Mishra, who is sitting over there, you are an erudite scholar and your talk reflected. So, thank you, Professor Chitranjan Mishra, and for that use of animal metaphor gave a fresh impetus to think and rethink about colonialism. Thank you, Dr. Virendra Badi, for being here and making us look at the whole thing through paintings, and that is what a real scholar does. And Maithili life and Madhubani painting is something which we standing in Odisha do not think of. We go to Patachitra, but that is also how we talk about our stories. And Madhubani painting is just another form of Indian depiction of Indian reality. Thank you. You have put it very subtly. Thank you, Professor Dula Prasad Acharya, for emphasizing how to move forward and how to get that colonialism totally go out of us, and that was really inspiring. And Ms. Uma Nandul has already left, and we have heard her saying that, see how she has emphasized on the fact that we should look into our culture. I'm really thankful that she could make some time out of her busy schedule and come here. And thank you for all the people who have got this auditorium set for today's program. And thank you, audience. If you all have not been here, our words would have gone in vain. Thank you, everyone. And it was indeed a great opportunity for. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for your nice moderation and coordination of this fourth plenary session. I thank Chairperson Professor Nisamani Kaura and the rest of the panel speakers of this fourth plenary session for their cooperation, extending their presentation and spending time with us and making this fourth plenary session successful. And now this is time to felicitate our guest of this fourth plenary session. We have with us Madam Professor Mitali Chinara, Director Student Welfare, Utsav University. Now I request Madam to come to dais to felicitate our guest.
यार ऊपर कैंट यार ऊपर का अरे wow.
Friends, within 2 minutes, we'll start the fifth plenary session. Please wait with patience. Within 2 minutes.
Phone